Hi everybody, Ian Argus here for JamPlay.com. Thanks for tuning in. This is the first week of a 10-week series that we're calling Strumming Mastery, and I'm excited to be here. Our first 5 weeks are going to focus mostly on using the pick in traditional strumming, but we're also going to focus on some other aspects of kind of rhythm guitar playing on the acoustic using the fingers in weeks 6 through 10. We'll be doing some fingerstyle stuff. So the first 5 strumming weeks are going to start out pretty with some foundations, pretty basic, and slowly building up to some more complex strumming patterns that I think you'll really enjoy. A lot of music in there. And then those next 5 weeks we'll start off with some basic kind of finger stuff. So we're going to be doing a combination of strict rhythm guitar playing. But we also are going to kind of play some melodies and some bass notes and play the guitar maybe in a more pianistic kind of way where you're hearing different things happening, maybe a melody in the right hand and some chords in the left hand. We're going to kind of try to approximate that on this instrument. But ultimately we're just really exploring the rhythm guitar, playing rhythm guitar on the acoustic guitar with a strumming kind of overview. So thanks for tuning in. This is week 1 and it's called Rhythm Basics. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about with beginners or advanced students, because I think this is something that we all have a sense of, but maybe we've never kind of explicitly named some of these things, these rhythms that I want to talk about. One of my favorite teachers, I really liked the way that he talked about this. He called it cutting the cake, or the pie, or whatever. So if you imagine like a circle, right, that's going to be our most basic rhythmic value. It's called a whole note. So I'm going to put the metronome on. This is at 60 beats per minute, and you're going to hear a kick on beat 1, and beats 2 and 3, 4 will just be a little bit different sound. You hear that? So here's beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So a whole note gets 4 counts. So here's a whole note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, pretty simple. Again, this is probably a review, and these are things that you've heard and you probably know about, but maybe you haven't thought about them in a while, or maybe no one ever told you exactly what a whole note or a half note, which is what I want to talk about next. So now imagine that you took your pizza slicer and you've cut down the middle of your pizza, and you have 2 halves, so half notes, right? So now I'm going to put the kick on beats 1 and 3. And those are going to be the half notes. Listen to what that sounds like. 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. So it's half of a whole note, right? Here it is with the strum. You hear that? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Great. Pretty simple stuff. Again, it's just nice to kind of name some of this stuff. So, after half notes, of course, now we have a pizza that has 2 halves. So now let's cut in half. Now we have 4 equal slices, right? Quarter notes. We'll keep the click on 1 and 3. So you hear 1, 2, 3, 4. Or to really bring that to light, let's make every one a kick. So every beat, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Quarter notes. 4 slices of pizza, 4 quarters in $1, if you will. Okay, so the next rhythmic subdivision that I want to get to today, and this will be the final subdivision for this lesson, is going to be eighth notes. And so you probably guessed it. We're going to take those quarter notes and we're going to halve them. So if we're thinking of our pizza analogy and we have 4 slices, we need to turn them into 8. How's that going to work exactly with the pizza cutter? Maybe some of you more artistic people can help me with that. But pizza aside, 8th notes. So what we're doing now is we're fitting 2 hits inside of every beat, right? So we're having each beat. So let me show you what that sounds like. These are 8th notes, okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Cool. So we're going to come back to these 4 rhythms, but this is a nice segue to talk about picking and strumming, okay? Because with the 8th notes, there are 2 different ways that we could approach them, and they have a different feel. So check it out. Maybe you can write in and let me know if you can identify the difference of what I'm doing. So I'm just going to play a couple chords and show you 2 different ways to strum 8th notes. 1, 2, 3. Here's the first way. Cool? Okay, so here's the second way. So first off, I'm hoping that you hear and feel that those feel differently. And different songs you hear on the radio are going to have both of those options happening in different things. The first thing I did were all downstrokes. So that has this really like pushing forward kind of feel, right? It's kind of chugga, everything is going. And they all sound the same, right? Because you're always hitting the low notes first. But then I switched to alternating, doing downs and ups. And that has more of like a folky kind of laid back feel. It doesn't feel so much like it's pushing forward. It kind of just settles. And that sounds like this. As opposed to... So I definitely feel the difference, and hopefully you're kind of picking up on what I'm saying about that.
Yeah, we got a couple people. Somebody says, I prefer the second one.
Oh, nice. Somebody likes the down up better.
Yep. And somebody said the difference is down and down up.
Nice.
So, yep, people are getting it.
We got some sharp audience today. That's great. Thanks for participating, guys. So that leads me to just a quick little discussion about the pick and what I'm doing. I've worked with students before, and if you've never played, it might feel a little weird to hold the pick, and it's like, what am I doing with it? Is it coming from my elbow or is it coming from my wrist? Another thing that people seem to struggle with is like, how hard do you need to hold the pick? Do you have to? I've had people where they're squeezing it, and you can almost see their knuckles turning white because they're holding it so hard. But actually, like the way I'm holding my pick, you could just take it right out of my hand. It's like almost no pressure. The other thing you have to consider is the angle, right? This would be straight. That would be a 90-degree angle, I believe. Geometry people help me out, but that's okay. But even better, kind of like a 45-degree angle. So you're really just brushing across the strings. It doesn't take, whether it's your thumb, which is fine if you're more of a thumb strummer. It's not like, right? There's no aggression in the strumming. It should be a pretty delicate thing. And that's a good thing to practice early on, because that's going to, when we do faster strums, right, or it's good to just kind of have a relaxed feel. Otherwise, you're going to be breaking strings and just making all sorts of racket, which can be fun. But to get a good picking technique, a good strumming technique with a pick, I recommend a light touch, brushing across the strings, kind of a 45-degree angle, and it's really coming mostly from my elbow for strumming, right? So I kind of have my elbow braced here at the edge of the guitar, and I'm just using that kind of like as a fulcrum point, and everything's coming from there. There's a little bit of wrist movement, but it's primarily coming from my elbow. In a later session or series or someone else's series, they'll talk about picking, and picking is much more from the wrist. But we're not here to talk about that today, but I just want to make that distinction clear, that single note stuff is kind of wrist oriented, and strumming stuff, multiple notes, is more elbow oriented. And there, there's a little bit of wrist action happening with the elbow. As we get into weeks, I think 3 and 4, we're going to talk about some bluegrass kind of strumming patterns, or what I would consider bluegrass. Later tonight, Tyler will come in and really tell you about bluegrass. But in weeks 3 and 4, I'll show you a couple simple kind of bluegrass strumming patterns that are going to use elbow and wrist. All right, so just a little segue there to kind of get you acquainted with the pick. Are there any questions about holding the pick, Jeff?
We have 2 questions. They're not necessarily about holding the pick, but they are pretty related. So
Okay, great.
We should ask them now.
Let's check it out. Yeah.
All right. So the first one is from Mr. Rico6.
Okay.
He says, "I seem to go away from the sound hole when I strum. How do I stop that?" And then the question should also be, should he stop that?
Well, let's listen. Like, I'm going to strum really far up the neck away from the sound hole. And now, just for contrast, I'm going to strum really far away from it, as far as I can, in the other direction, towards the bridge. So very different characters of timbre and tone. This is kind of a warm sound. This is pretty bright. Twangy. And then somewhere in the middle, can you hear how that really starts to change? So, haven't answered your question yet, but I just kind of want to draw your attention to the fact that you might want to do those things, strum or pick in different areas of the guitar, depending on what kind of a sound you want. In classical guitar, they have terms for that. I'm not an expert on that music, but I believe when you pick far away from the sound hole close to the bridge, they refer to as ponticello. Maybe somebody watching can confirm or deny that, but so the notes to my ear get a little bit fuller, rounder. They have more, just more body to them as you're over the sound hole and close to the neck. And as you get away, they feel more brittle. And I guess if we want to kind of really keep talking about this for a second, we have to consider what's happening when we're picking the string. The goal of picking the string is to make the string vibrate. So, back here, I'm trying to make it vibrate, from a very, I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but it's very close to where it begins, right? So there's not a lot of give right there. It's hard to really get a big vibration when I'm just touching right here and I'm trying to make this whole string vibrate. But as I get closer, I'm far enough away from the nexus point, is what I keep wanting to call it, or the bridge right here. I'm far enough away from that point where the string is initiating that I can actually kind of get a decent vibration going in either way. The other consideration is that the way the acoustic guitar is designed is that the sound hole itself and the hollow body of the guitar is acting as an amplifier to amplify the vibrating of the string. Some of you guys may have seen this, maybe Jeff, you've seen it. There's a cool video where someone puts their phone inside the guitar. Have you seen that one, Jeff? And they put the camera like facing up at the strings. And you can actually, like, from below, you can really see the strings vibrating. Maybe we should do that sometime. But I don't think that the way you described it doesn't sound like a problem to me, Rico. Of course, I'm not watching you, so I can't completely address what you're referring to, but
I think he's maybe talking about playing diagonally, so it's changing positions as he strums.
So he's kind of like going away from it.
Yeah, and he's asking if there's any...
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there is a little bit of that built in, right? Because the way that your elbow's swooping, it's a radius, right? It's like you're not going straight up and down like from the shoulder or something. Right? I'm kind of bracing my elbow right here. And so it is kind of a diagonal motion, isn't it? Up, down, across. And then where I do it changes the sound. But that doesn't seem like a problem to me, Rico. I apologize if I'm missing your concern. Feel free to write in and let me know if I've addressed that question fully or if that leaves something to be desired for you.
So this question I believe you already answered in your last description, but we'll just go through it real quick just to make sure.
Cool.
It's from Tom Hanking. Where is the best place to strum? As in directly over the sound hole, or slightly behind, or slightly toward the back? Or is any spot better?
Cool. Yeah, Tom Hanking, thanks for the question. Yeah, I think I did just talk a little bit about that. Hopefully that helped. And to kind of recap, I don't think there is a right or a wrong way, or a right or wrong place to strum. It's just all about what are you trying to achieve. Kind of right over the sound hole, that's probably the most traditional place to play. I think that's going to give you the most projection. It's going to cause the strings to vibrate the most, and then go inside the body and come out. But these can be really nice too. I really like to go back there for like a dramatic backward strum or an upstroke, like that can be pretty spicy. And then, you see guys kind of playing up here. If they want to be really delicate and really warm, So I would say experiment with that. Different places give you a different sound. That's really what it's all about.
Okay, we do have one question about the pick, and then we will move on to the next segment.
Sweet.
So any questions you guys ask now will be asked during our next break, or if it's a general question at the end of the lesson. All right, this one is from Ronald Knorr, and he says, how about the thickness of the pick for strumming on acoustic guitar?
Yeah, good.
What's best? Great
question, Ronald. This isn't my favorite acoustic pick today, but or my most typical acoustic pick. I'll bring a sampling of picks next week to show you, to demonstrate the different sounds that they get. I think for strumming, I prefer kind of a light gauge pick, something that has a little bit of give. This one here, this green one, is thicker than the other one I was doing. I would be more inclined to use this green pick for single note stuff. And this black pick is getting closer to what I would use for strumming. Let's try to do that a little bit more back to back. Granted, it's a subtle difference, but I'm definitely hearing it. I definitely hear a difference between the thick, very thick pick and a lighter pick. And then if you go even lighter, I'm kind of a fan of the Dunlop picks. I like the way that the material that they're made out of for strumming. Some of the picks that I use for electric or for single notes, like a Fender type pick, it's a different material. I think it's called like celluloid. And when I strum a lot on the acoustic, I find that those picks kind of, they wear differently. But there's something nice about the Dunlops, maybe like an orange, just to get a nice, rhythmic strumming thing happening. You don't want too much resistance. You don't want too much thickness. I think it's kind of like different drumsticks. There'd be different gauges of drumsticks. And really what I would tell you to do is go to your local store and buy one of like a bunch of different picks and like check them out, make a little recording of yourself using those and just see how they feel to you. I think that hands-on, it can be a great way to like get a feel for that. And if you're not that into buying a bunch of picks and experimenting, try something that's, thin to medium, orange or red if you're talking Dunlop. I think you'll be happy with that for strumming. Good question. And like I said, I will bring a sampling of picks next week, and we'll check that out. That's a good idea.
Okay, so we're good to move on now.
All right, cool. So the next thing that I want to get into is just playing a few chords. So these chords are pretty familiar, and I wanted to remind you that on the screen you're looking at now, I believe there's a little button that says practice, and you can click on these tabs that have just come up on my screen and maybe yours. And you see that I'm looking at 4 chords: G, E minor, C, and D7. I chose these particular ones for a special reason, and I'm going to talk to you about that. And I have a special fingering in mind. So I want you to play your G chord, just a standard 3-finger G. And I want you to use middle finger, first finger, third finger. Sometimes we like to use third finger, second finger, pinky. That can be great. We're going to use that later in the series. But for today, I want to do 2, 1, 3. And here's why. Because the next chord is E minor. So whenever we're switching between chords, it's really helpful to have an anchor note, something that's staying the same. And in this case, my first finger can be my anchor between G and E minor. And the way that I've picked these 4 chords is that you have an anchor into each one. So I'll show you that real quick and then we'll break all that down. But so G to E minor, your first finger stays. E minor to C, your middle finger stays. C to D7, your first finger stays. Pretty slick, right? And then I think of from the D7 to the G, I just sort of slide it up, and then I bring these down. I see them both as a triangle shape, and this one is like a compact triangle, right? And then the G chord would just be spread out and scooted up. Good. So let's go through that again. The G chord is second finger, first finger, third finger. just like on the chord chart. And I think a handful of you know this. And if you don't have your guitar out yet, go ahead, grab your guitar, play along with me. Let's make some music together. You know, I know we can't hear each other. I can't hear you anyway, but I can feel you. Okay, so G chord going into E minor. So like I said, keep the first finger down, and then the second finger, it just scoots over and slips right under that first finger on the 4th string 2nd fret. And you got a beautiful E minor chord. Okay, now this first finger that was our anchor from G, what's going to happen with that is it's going to just slide over here to the 2nd string 1st fret. And our 3rd finger comes in on 5th string 3rd fret to give us a C chord. And when we play the C, we try to avoid that 6th string from ringing, right? That's why there's an X on that chord grid on string 6. That means kind of like avoid that. In this case, it wouldn't be the end of the world if you hit it, but I think you'll agree there's more clarity when you avoid it. And this is something that's going to come up a lot in these 10 weeks. We're going to be talking about subtle things that happen, like to avoid that 6th string. You see, I'm actually not avoiding it with my pick. I'm actually kind of just making it so that it's not making a sound by the way I'm touching here. So that's something that we're going to talk more about as we go forward, and just some kind of like a little seed that I want to plant in your mind about left-hand muting. Just something you can just start to think about. It's not something you have to be skilled at right away. But as we go forward, I think you'll get more comfortable with it. Cool. So now to get to a D7, the 2nd finger just goes from string 4 down to string 3. See that? And then the 3rd finger goes from fret 3 up to string 1. And on this D7 chord, you notice there's 2 X's, XXO, and you know, not hugs and kisses, but although that would be fine. But so that means XX, don't play those strings, and O, do play that one. Okay, is that cool? And then we just slide back up into G. All right, so now we've kind of laid the groundwork. Let's look at that, the rhythms. Let's revisit the rhythms. So on that sheet that you have, and be sure to download that and keep that. That's something that you know, that is there for you. Starts with whole notes, right? And then it goes to half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes. So I put the metronome on 60 beats per minute, a moderate speed, slow. They call it adagio. We're talking about 60 beats per minute, right? So this is 1 second. So listen to those seconds just tick away. Here we go. Whole notes. I'm going to pause here for just a second to talk about what just happened. You see my thumb came up over here? That's another subtle little thing that happens sometimes, and that's kind of designed, again, to mute that string. So I'm kind of like double muting it between this finger here is muting it, but then also my thumb was muting it. Again, just little things that you can kind of be aware of, and you don't have to be skilled at that right away. And the other thing that I wanted to address is that if you are like a totally brand new beginner and you're trying to do these whole notes, I think of it as like you have 4 beats to find the next one. So check it out. I might have a beginner do it like this, like you play, and then 2, 3, 4, you're moving, so that by 1, you're ready. 2, 3, 4. There it is. 1, 2. I'm moving. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So ultimately, you want to let those ring out for the full 4 counts. But when you're starting out, just like 1, and get ready. You're training your fingers where to go. It's, you know, the good old muscle memory that we talk about. Okay, cool? Let's do that a few times. Let's hang out on the whole notes in case you're playing along and you want to jam with me, and you're new to this. Let's try it. 1, 2, whole notes. Two more times. Was that once or twice more? I forgot. I think that's another thing that I do like to kind of point out to people sometimes. When we think about playing music, I think a lot of people say that one of the benefits is kind of like relaxation. I don't know if you all would agree with that, but I think that that's something that a lot of people turn to music for, is like a way to unwind, to relax a little bit. And so I think that sometimes it's easy to say, oh, well, that's slow. Those are whole notes. That's kind of boring. Like, I don't really want to waste my time with that. But I actually think that it's really valuable, even for an advanced player, to just sit down, 4 cycles through those whole notes. Because what you're doing, one, is you're kind of tuning in to the sound, to the beat, and you might be relaxing a little bit. It's almost meditative, The challenge can be to stay focused, right? I lost count. But I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes a slow speed can be a great place to start. And it doesn't mean that you're a beginner, or it doesn't mean that it's not hip. It's just like, it's something that I work on, so I think it's cool to do. That's my 2 cents. So let's move in and check out some half notes now. So this is when things get a little bit more tricky if you're brand new, because now you don't have 3 beats to switch. You just have 1 beat. Okay? But let's try it. Let's see if you can hang with this. 1, 2, 3. Now beat 4, you got to switch. 1, 2, 3. Switch. There's my thumb again, muting. Half notes. And I'm just really listening, trying to like lock into that. Nice. So, half notes. Would any of you like me to hang out on whole notes and half notes for a while? Or should we kind of scoot over to the quarters? What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, guys, just type out in the chat. If you'd like, we could go through whole notes and half notes a couple more times, and you could pick up your guitar and play along. Just let us know real quick if that's what you want.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we do have a question we could answer while we're waiting for some feedback on that.
Oh, swell.
I actually need to get this up on screen real quick.
Okay, cool. Well, we're waiting for a question.
Actually, I'll just read it out.
Okay.
So X Ristos wants to know. He says, "Do you recommend continuing strumming, like continuing the strumming motion, even when you're not going to hit any strings? So kind of, do you keep your arm going all the time, or what?
Good question. That's really going to come into play next week when we're going to learn a strumming pattern. Down, down, up, down, up is that pattern. When we talk about syncopation, I think that's week 2 that we're going to do that. Let me think about that. Am I doing that right now? I'm really not. I think by the time you get to quarter notes, right, you are bringing your hand back up each time. But if you're doing whole notes, you've got a lot of time to kind of chill out. So I think the answer to your question is yes. Ultimately, when you're actually strumming, you're going to be kind of keeping it going up and down. That's a good point. We will get to that. But right now, I'm kind of thinking of this as a rhythm exercise that I happen to be applying to some chords for your benefit. But this is an exercise that I would do with scales and with single notes. I think of it as an expansion and a contraction. So maybe I'll go ahead and finish the thought, show you the quarter notes and the half notes, the quarter notes and the eighth notes, and then I'll show you about the expansion contraction.
Okay, before we do go into the chord notes, there were some people who would like a quick
great.
Some practice with the half note.
Okay, let's do some half note practice. And in that case, what I'll usually do is if we're struggling to get the half notes at 60, I'll drop it down, like to 40. I have a couple little tricks about that. So here's one trick. Drop it down to 40 and do half notes. Whew. It's a lot slower, so you kind of have to listen for a second so that you don't rush it. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. See, I'm even rushing it. It's like... And notice I'm doubling the lengths of the chords. I'm doing them for 2 measures each right now. And on to D7. So that's one thing I like to do is to slow it down, 40, maybe 50. But we kind of blew over something that's called a dotted half note. That's what happens when we're in 3/4 time. And sometimes that can be a nice segue from whole notes to half notes. Because, right, if we play a whole note, we strum on beat 1, and then we have beats 2, 3, 4 to prepare for the next chord, to switch. 1, 2, 3. So 3 beats to switch. That's a lot of beats. But then to cut that down from 3 to 1, that can feel like, whoa. So what you can do is switch to 3/4 time, and now you have 2 beats to switch. Does that make sense? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I can strum on 1, and then I have 2, 3 to switch. Oops, I did it too soon. Here you go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Right? And that's a waltz. Yeah. That's something that I like to do. It just didn't fit well into my my pie analogy, right? Because that's based on 4, But I'm really glad that this came up because waltz is a great and a very prevalent thing that happens in music. So, and maybe we'll address that more in the future. But yeah, so those are a few ways that you can start easing yourself into those half notes. Either slow it down and stick to the half notes, or keep it at 60 and go to 3/4, where you get to have 2 beats. So let's do a little bit of that one more time on 3/4, doing that same exercise, G, E minor, C, D7, in 3/4 time rather than 4/4 time. And does anybody need me to explain the difference? I can talk about that. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Right? So if that's starting to feel comfortable, then you can take it one step further, go back to 4/4, and see if you can, now you can do the switch in just one beat, right? So again, 4/4 time you have one strum, 3 beats to change. 3/4 time you have one strum, 2 beats to change. And then we could call it 2/4 time, or we could just say half notes. You have 1 beat to strum, 1 beat to change. Four, 3, 4. I would like to point out that the half notes are only a problem. It's only a problem with the second half note, right? When you're going into the next measure to change, unless you're changing your chords on beat, twice in a measure. But you notice that time I had plenty of time to go 1, 2, 3, but then it's beat 4 when I have to get ready and get over to that next one. I just wanted to clarify that. Here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's good. So I think we can kind of switch into the quarter notes, because if you can do half notes, you can do quarter notes. They're not much different. And even if you're still struggling with the half notes, you are going to struggle just a tiny bit more with the quarter notes, aren't you? Check it out and let me know how y'all are doing. We're going to come back and do all the values. Here's quarter notes though. So this is like the third line of your PDF, right? 2, 3, 4. Every beat. As I was doing that, I was just thinking about how I wonder if a decent analogy would be that it's kind of like learning to ride a bike. Do you think that would be fair? Because with that, nobody can really learn to ride a bike for you, right? Like somebody can be there holding you up and you can have some training wheels and stuff. But at some point, you just sort of have to let go and trust that you're not going to fall over a few times. It's kind of the same with the guitar. Like, it's a physical sensation almost of what happens when you switch. And just as you do this every day, a little bit every day, that's the key, is to play every day. if it's 5 minutes, that's great. If it's 10 minutes, that's better. And we could continue that with more time and betterness. But just a little bit every day really goes a long way because, it's all about some scientific brain neurons or something, right? They have to like connect. And if you do that every day, they stay close together. And then each day you can bring them closer together. But if you're taking a few days off, they might start to drift apart again, and then you have to work extra hard to get just back to where you were. So I think that if you can go every day a little bit, you're going to have the best results, the quickest results. And like I said, even if that's 5 minutes a day, even if all you do until you can do it is just switch from G to E minor. I mean, that might be like a week project. That might be a month project, But if you're chipping away at it every day, it's going to improve. And then the cool thing about it is once you've learned to transition from one chord to a second chord, then learning to transition from the second one to the third one, you're building on skills that you already have. So remember, at the beginning is always the most kind of difficult, the most alien feeling. You feel the most vulnerable and incompetent. But as you just keep going, you're going to get better. That's pretty much a given. I think pretty much everybody can ride a bike, right? Although I haven't done it for a long time, so but I think that I made my point. Can we just go to eighth notes now? So again, we're splitting this beat in half. And this gets back to that last question about, am I always going up and down, or are you going to keep your hand moving? As we get to these faster rhythms, these greater subdivisions, as we're slicing the pie into smaller and smaller pieces, there's going to be less time to get back to the original position. Here's eighth notes. These are quarter notes, and now eighth notes. And I'm doing down up, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Or all downs. 3 and 4 As I'm doing the pulsing down note strums on the G chord, I was just had that song in my mind. Is it called Yellow? Isn't that kind of the way that Yellow sounds? Just with like that plodding forward all down strokes. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. So what I'd like to do is to go through the whole cycle, whole, half, quarter, eighth. And this time when we get to eighth, they're going to be down ups. And then also when we finish one measure of eighths, we're going to come back up the cycle. So we're going to go whole, half, quarter, eighth, quarter, half, whole. That's the expansion contraction thing I was referring to. Just all on one chord right now. How about E minor? Half notes. Quarters, eighths, quarters, half notes, whole notes. Again, whole, half, quarter, these are quarters, halves, and a whole. Right, so you noticed I ended up doing some goofy backward strums and stuff. I think that's a sound you've heard a lot. So you can experiment with that. Right? In that case, you're hearing the high notes before the low ones. A little different sound than... These are very subtle things, but these are the nuts and bolts of becoming skilled at rhythm acoustic guitar, I think. Any questions?
So do you think we could go through that practice section one more time and just spend a little more time on each note type?
Yeah.
To round the lesson up, and then we can go into the questions?
Yeah. Okay, so just a little more focus on the different rhythmic values.
Yeah, just a little longer for the people who have the guitar in their hands so they can
Great.
play along.
Let's do it this time. Let's have we have 4 different values, right? We have whole, half, quarter, eighth, and we have 4 different chords. So let's play through the progression. G will be whole notes, E minor will be half notes, C will be quarters, D7 will be eighths. And we'll do that a few times. Let's try that. So we start out with whole notes on G. Then E minor is going to be half notes. 1, 2. C. 1, 2. D7. Back to whole notes. And half notes. This will be the last time. Half notes on E minor. Now we're going to do the whole cycle with the same value, and we'll go through. So these are all whole notes through the chord progression. Great, now let's do half notes. Quarter notes. Eighth notes. Do eighth notes again. Quarter notes. These are half notes, right? And then whole notes. Dramatic back strum. Cool. So you'll notice that the PDF you have has three lines, 4 lines to show those. There it is. 4 lines and 4 chords. And obviously we did a bunch of other stuff with this material today. But these, again, are a little bit, think of them as like little seeds seed material for you to kind of elaborate on. And I do believe that this lesson and all of these lessons will be archived, so you can go back and you can watch it again and you can play along with me again, you know. And yeah, let's turn it over to any questions you might have.
Alrighty then, we have a question from Omar Z. And he says, I'm a beginner and having difficulty keeping time or beat when strumming. Do you have any advice?
Yeah. Omar, struggling with the beat. Are you a dancer? People always tell me to go dancing. That'll give you good rhythm. I need to do that. I can't dance. I mean, I really think that what we're talking about is listening and feeling. And I guess that's a little abstract, right? But if you're not really listening to the beat, if you're not really honed in on it, like all your focus on where is the beat coming from, what is that sound? That's why I like to do the whole notes at first. And before I do it, I might just sit there and listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Just to kind of internalize that beat. That's kind of the first step, is listening. And then I think we did talk about quite a bit of that stuff today about, strumming. So if you're struggling with it, then this is the perfect week for you to tune in, because that's what this is all about today. So I would say simplify. Don't play multiple chords, just play one chord, a very simple one. It could even just be all open strings, right? You could try that. First you want to hear beat 1 has a different sound. Boom. Boom. We want to orient ourselves to the 1. And we could just strum every time that's a 1. Can you feel that? That's my advice, Omar. I feel like it's something that you need to spend some time with, and you just need to listen and feel. And I think that you're on the right path. You're asking the right questions, and you're going to get it, man. Just hang in there and practice with this video. Listen to the beat, go dancing.
Naughty Pirate also said just always play with a metronome.
Yeah.
Which seems like good advice, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that keeps everybody honest. That way we really know, like, where is the beat. I could do more of that myself. I think there's different kinds of time, right? There's strict metronomic time, which is what we're working on right now and what you want to develop. And then there's other styles of music where you can the time can be a little more elastic. You can stretch and pull and flow. And I love playing that kind of music too. And both are really important to work on. And the metronome is a great tool. One thing that does help folks if they're struggling with a slow tempo is if you just kind of go ahead and let those subdivisions play. That way you have more to keep track of. We could even exaggerate that, give you more to keep track of. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. That's a big trick that people talk about that I've found helpful, is that the slower the tempo is, the more that you want to feel the subdivisions. You want to feel, that was a 16th note. We'll talk about those next week, but we're really feeling the subdivisions so that we have more to kind of latch onto. But then when we're working on something that's like an up-tempo thing, this can feel frantic to try to keep back of every beat. So in this case, you might try to feel the smaller beats. 2, 3, 1. You feel that? Like, so here I'm just feeling beat 1, really. 1, 1, 1, 1. Because if I try to think 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, I'm going to get tired. My foot's going to get tired. But if I just kind of lock in on 1, 1, suddenly it doesn't feel so fast. You know, I can sink my teeth into that. So that's a good trick. Faster the tempo, feel the larger subdivisions like whole notes. And then the slower the tempo, you can feel faster subdivisions like up to 16th notes. And that kind of brings everything more into the same area, right? Because 16th notes really slow don't feel all that different from like whole notes really fast. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't think I said it as articulately as I could have, but I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, he says, I understand, thanks.
Groovy.
Cool. We're going to move on to this question from Sir Earl of Tombs. He says, so do you assign colors to chords? The reason I ask is chords represent emotion. I have never heard anybody tell what chord is what emotion.
Awesome. No, I don't assign colors to chords. I think that's a cool idea. As far as chords representing emotion, definitely. And I think that the most basic form of that, right, is that people say that a major chord, you know, if we want to have very basic emotions, we'll say this is a happy chord, right? But I'll do that same G chord and I'll make it minor. And we say that this is like sad, right? It's a little more somber, a little more serious. The major one is a little more lighthearted, sunny day, things are cool. Minor chord feels a little bit more like nighttime and what's going on, you know, a little more mysterious. But yeah, I think that's a neat idea. And there would have to be many, many different shades of the colors, right, to really get a clear picture of what's going on. We couldn't just have red, orange, green, yellow, blue, right? There would have to be all those different shades of those colors in between, you know, to really get at what chords are. That's kind of a neat question, though, Sir Earl. Thanks for bringing it up. The main thing I can say is, you know, happy major, sad minor. That's kind of like, if we want to boil it down, that's the best I can do for you.
Well, friend, it looks like we are all out of questions today, which is good because that means people understand.
Groovy. Well, gosh, I can't thank you all enough for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed it. I think I learned a lot today. That's gonna be great for next week too. So we have 9 more lessons coming up every Tuesday night. 6 o'clock Eastern time. Next week we're gonna get into a little bit more complicated strumming. So you're gonna want to maybe look ahead and download the PDFs for all 10 weeks. I do believe you can get them all right now, and then you can kind of be looking ahead and saying, okay, this is what we're gonna do. So this week, for kind of an assignment, I would like you to practice with your metronome on that sheet of paper, the PDF, the 4-line PDF. And like I said, maybe put your metronome around 40, maybe up to 60 if you're a little bit more experienced. And even if you're advanced, like I'd like you to keep it at 60. I know that it feels boring, but I think you'll get a lot out of it just locking into that groove. And we'll speed it up later. So next week, we're going to talk more about the eighth notes, and we're really going to talk about syncopation. We're going to talk about playing on the upbeats of chords, and that's really what brings this stuff to life. Something like that instead of... Okay, so good work, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting JamPlay. Hope you're inspired to go play some music, and we'll see you here next time, 6 o'clock, and we'll talk about more strumming.